Today is multiplying and dividing fractions. So even though everyone hates fractions, this is actually easier than adding fractions. And you guys did pretty good at adding and subtracting fractions, so hopefully this one feels even better. Okay, so when we're multiplying fractions, the first thing that we do is we multiply across the top. And then we multiply across the bottom. Right? So the top of a fraction we know is called the numerator. And the bottom is called a denominator. Okay, so let's look at this first one for example. We just multiply across the top. So 1 times 7 is 7. And 2 times 8 is 16. And you always want to see if you can simplify it. But this one we can't simplify. So we are literally just done. That's it. All right. So try to not use a calculator. You want to try to be doing these multiplications in your head. You want to get practice at getting fast at it. Okay, so for the next one, we have 3 times 3 is 9, right? 5 times 4 is 20, and it can't simplify, so we're done. Right, so this is much easier than adding and subtracting, because adding and subtracting, you need a common denominator. Multiplying and dividing, you don't. So sometimes people get confused and they try to multiply and get the common denominator, and they get themselves messed up. Okay, this one, even though there's the parentheses, we still know that two numbers next to each other is multiplying. So we're going to multiply across. 2 times 5 is 10. 3 times 2 is 6. And then this one we actually do have to simplify. So both of these numbers are divisible by 2. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we get 5 over 3. So that's our final answer. This one will get you partial credit. This one will get you full credit. What? Okay, yeah. So to simplify, we want to see if both of these numbers are divisible by something, right? So the 10 is divisible by a 2. The 6 is divisible by a 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then our last one, we have a negative in here. So if you remember from previous notes, we had same sign becomes a positive, right? Multiplying. And then different sign, or signs, turns into a negative, right? So if I have a positive and a negative, I know my answer is going to be a negative. So we just want to keep that in mind as we do this. So 2 times 3 is 6. 7 times 5 is 35. And we can't simplify this, but we need to make sure it's negative. So you can put it on the top or the bottom or the middle. They're all the same. Right? So you could do negative 6 over 35 or 6 over negative 35, or you could put it right in the middle. But don't do it for both. These are all the correct answer. Not so bad. Okay, so multiplying an integer and a fraction. So remember, integers, full numbers, and fractions, the thing that everyone hates, yeah? So the thing that you want to do when you have an integer is you just want to rewrite it as a fraction. So when you have a full number, all you have to do is put it over 1. So this is the same thing as 3 over 1 times 4 over 5. And now we can just do the same thing that we did in the first part of the packet, and we just multiply. So this becomes 12. 3 times 4 is 12. 1 times 5 is 5. And this can't simplify, so we're done there. Okay, so by yourselves, I want you to work on these next two problems. Okay, so for this one, we're going to rewrite this 6 as 6 over 1. And this one stays the same. And then we just multiply across. So 6 times 2 is 12. 1 times 3 is 3. And then this one we can simplify. 12 divided by 3 is actually a whole number. So this one's not so bad. All right, and then the last one has a negative, so it looks worse than it is. We have 3 over 4. So we don't have to change the first one, but now I have to change the second one. And then we have negative 2 over 1. So 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. 4 times 1 is 4. And then we can simplify this to negative 3 over 2, because they're both divisible by 2. Okay, so halfway done, we did multiplying fractions, and now we're going to do dividing fractions. So when we're dividing fractions, there's one little trick, and then it becomes easy. So a lot of people forget this, but all we have to do is flip the second fraction and multiply. So this is the same thing as multiply by the reciprocal. So you might have heard that vocab word before in a previous math class, but a reciprocal means like you flip it. Okay, so let's try this. So we have 3 over 4 divided by 7 over 5, so we want to rewrite that as 3 over 4 times, and then we flip it, 5 over 7. And now it's just a problem like it was at the top of the page. So 3 times 5 equals 15. 4 times 7 equals 28. It can't simplify, and that's it. So dividing fractions is just as easy as multiplying fractions, but you just need to remember that one trick of flipping. All right, so the next one we're going to rewrite it. We keep the first one the same. We change it to a multiply, and we flip it. So instead of 3 over 10, it is now 10 over 3. And then we simply multiply across. So 1 times 10 is 10. 5 times 3 is 15. And then we can simplify this one because they're both divisible by 5. So 10 divided by 5 is 2. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So again, this would be full credit. This would be partial credit, because I want you to start simplifying. And then for the last one of this, we have some negatives, which makes it look confusing. But let's just start with what we know. So we have negative 2 over 3. That one's the same. We make it a times, and then we flip it. Negative 5 over 4. And it doesn't really matter where you put the negative sign, because in the end it's going to be the same. So I put them both on top, but you could put one on top, one on the bottom. In the end, it's going to be the same. So negative 2 times negative 5, well, 2 of the same sign is a positive. So negative times a negative gives you positive 10. And then 3 times 4 is 12. And then this simplifies to 5 over 6. Because they're both divisible by 2. So this one looked confusing, but you just have to keep track of your signs. And then make sure you remember the rules for multiplying negative numbers. Okay, last section, and then we're done. Dividing an integer and a fraction. So again, all we have to do is change the integer into a fraction. So this becomes 3 divided by 1 divided by 4 over 9. So that was the first step, is changing the integer to a fraction. Second step, multiplying and flipping. And then the last step is we multiply across. So 3 times 9 is 27, divided by 1 times 4 is 4. So sometimes these have like additional steps, but it all ends up being just as easy as the very first part of the page. So first step, we turn this 6 into a fraction. Everything else is the same. Second step, we flip it. And then third step is we multiply. 3 times 7 is 42. 1 times 3 is 3. And this you can actually simplify. So 42 divided by 3, we have 1, 3, 12, so 14. I'm going to show you another way to simplify over here. So we have 6 over 1 times 7 over 3. So you can actually do the simplifying before you even multiply out. So this and this are multiples of each other. So instead of 6 and 3, you could switch it to be 2 and 1. And then you can multiply across and you get 14 over 1, or just 14. So you can always simplify at any point in the problem. Some people like to do it in the middle like this. Some people like to do it at the end, but you always want to simplify. Obviously, I don't want you to use a calculator in this section, but you can always simplify with a calculator in the future. All right, last one. First step, we turn that integer into a fraction, -2 over 1. Second step, we flip the second guy, 1 over -2. And then third step, we multiply. 5 times 1 is 5. 8 times -2 is -16. And that can't be simplified, so that's it. So not so bad, just lots of multiplication and keeping track of the flipping and the negatives and trying to remember your times tables. So that is all for multiplying and dividing fractions.